Welcome everyone to our webinar today, URM's webinar on Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. Today we're going to talk about the recent changes that were released in April and how they may affect your organisation. So my name's Lauren Gotting, new business director at URM, and I'm joined by Amajit Sandhu, cybersecurity analyst, but Cyber Essentials assessor, Cyber Essentials Plus assessor as well. So in a good spot to come and sit with me today. So a quick agenda. So we will give a high-level introduction to the scheme for anyone that's joined us today that is new to Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus. So we'll run through what they are, and that's a very high-level requirements for certification, scope, all of that good stuff. We'll then move on to the updates since April, when Willow was introduced. What changes have been made to Cyber Essentials, the Plus assessment, and how they may impact your organisation. For those that kindly put questions when they registered, we'll address those first. But as ever with our events, you are able to put questions in the question pane as we work through the presentation. So please, any questions pop up, yeah, send them across. We'll get to as many as we can in the time we have available, but any that we don't reach, we'll get in touch and we'll address them offline. We had about 1,000 people register, so we're hoping we'll have loads of questions come in. So yeah, please keep them coming. So a bit of background into URM as an organisation. So this year is our 20th birthday. So we've been in business for 20 years. And at URM, we have our cyber team, which is very relevant to today's session. So Cyber Essentials Plus experts, pen testing. We also have the governance, risk and compliance team as well. So under one roof, we provide the policies, the processes, the documents, as well as the cyber, the technical, the testing side of things. So bring that all together for our clients. And what stands URM out from the crowd, I'd say, is the passion of the people that work at URM. So whether cyber assessors, pen testers, GRC consultants, they've all worked within businesses doing their role before they've joined us as a consultant. So have the real world experience and is really passionate in helping businesses improve and achieve their objectives rather than sort of tick box exercises. It's like, right, how can we improve security here? How can we make businesses better? With that, so we work with businesses for Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus, ISO standards, GDPR, PCI, whole range of different services there and different expertise. And we're accredited, so we're Cyber Essentials Plus, Cyber Advisor, part of the NCSC's Cyber Incident Exercising Scheme. We've got our CREST, we've got our ISO, so we try and practice what we preach as well ahead of these events. Okay, so Amajit, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Lauren. I'm Amajit, or AJ, whichever you prefer. Around 30 plus years of experience in various IT roles, technical and not technical, from fixing printers and basic laptop stuff to servers to domain admin, enterprise admin, designing patching solutions for multinationals and small companies and implementing those to all the way to migrating data centers for multinationals.
Okay, so a lot of real world experience, AJ.
Yep, comes in useful with Cyber Essentials because we see small clients and multinationals. Excellent.
And AJ, you're Cyber Essentials Plus assessor. Roughly how many certificates have you issued over the years?
That one's hard to remember all of them, but I put around 1,000-ish, somewhere around there. Yep.
I'm sure you've probably had a few standout ones in the time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you, AJ. So very quickly, we're going to just cover what are the Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus schemes. As I said, this is more for those that are new to Cyber Essentials or looking to achieve it. And ahead of that, just got a quick poll. So we've got an understanding of people's level that have joined us. So we're just going to ask if you've got Cyber Essentials, if you've got Cyber Essentials Plus, or if you don't have any of those, and maybe you are sort of brand new to this. So the poll will pop up on your screen, and we will issue the results out a little bit later. Okay, so bit of background, bit of Cyber Essentials overview here. So the scheme itself is government backed. So the NCSC, the National Cyber Security Centre, the government arm around cyber security, is the scheme owner, and they established the requirements based off the top 10 common cyber attacks back in the day when it was first established. And the requirements themselves are really supposed to be simple controls that should apply to all businesses, that the businesses should deem essential to be in place to protect them from the common threats. So Cyber Essentials isn't designed to protect businesses from your sophisticated attacks, but it's the bare minimum. It's the essentials that people should have in place to stay protected. Working alongside the NCSC is IASME, who are the accreditation body. So they administer the scheme. They pull the requirements into a questionnaire. They run the feedback, the data, the results, and work very closely with the NCSC. And then working with IASME are the likes of URM, so the actual certification body. So we're the organisation that marks the questionnaires, carries out the plus assessments, and issues the certificate. So the requirements come from the NCSC and IASME, and we apply them and make sure businesses are adhering to them, really. So brief timeline here. So Cyber Essentials was launched in 2014, and over the years has had a number of significant changes. So I think 2020 was a big one, where rather than having 5 administrators of the scheme, IASME was appointed the sole delivery partner to work with NCSC. And then 2 years on from that, Attendees was a major questionnaire update. Attendees, then we went to Montpellier, another, I suppose, major, where the requirements changed quite a bit in 2023. And then 2 years later, we're now sitting with the Willow Question Set. So you'll see, as threats have changed and as technology's changed over the years, the requirements have to change to sort of keep up with that. And as a certification body, URM's been issuing certificates, I think, for around the 7-year mark as well. So I've got a lot of expertise and experience in this. And most recently, so 2025, over 200,000 certificates there have been issued. Okay, so a quick snapshot in numbers there. So if you're eligible for Cyber Essentials and meet some requirements, you are able to get some insurance. So 92% fewer insurance claims made if people have got Cyber Essentials in place. Nearly 90% of businesses would recommend people doing Cyber Essentials to organisations in a similar position. I think, again, that is because of the coverage. It is essential. It's not designed that you've got to go out and spend tens and thousands of pounds on some, fancy system. It is the essential stuff. Nearly 70%, so 69% of organisations believe that it's increased competitiveness. We'll dive into that a little bit later in terms of the benefits as well, because it's a very well recognised standard now. And 80%, get the benefit of helping mitigate cyber risks. And I'm sure for a lot of organisations, it's a great starting point, and it makes them think about security that they may not have considered previously. So we're just going to cover here some steps to achieving Cyber Essentials. So preparation is key. Again, we'll dive into that a little bit more when AJ gets involved a few slides down. Following that, you'll want to work with a certification body. So you are a certification body, and more can be found through IASME's website. Once you've engaged there, you get access to a self-assessment questionnaire. I think it's just under 100 questions that include, business name, reg number, but then dives into the technicals around firewalls and configuration and access and all of that good stuff. So you complete the questionnaire, and then once you finish that, you hit the submit button, and then your certification body will review your responses. And if they are all compliant and you meet the requirements, it's fairly straightforward, and you get issued your certificate. So it's a fairly straightforward process. Certificate, they last for a year, so 12 months from the date. And then, year 2, you re-go through the process, and you're presented with a questionnaire again, and do the same thing again in year 2. As a certification body, we get involved with loads of Cyber Essentials certificates, loads of reviews. If you are working with us and for attending this webinar, we will provide a free review of the SAQ ahead of submission for anyone that registers with us before the end of August. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, and please register on your feedback form if it's of interest. Okay, so thank you very much for those that participated in the poll. So nearly 50% of attendees today have Cyber Essentials Plus. That's a great big number. So 46%. 26% of attendees haven't got either, so maybe looking to go through this process. So hopefully this helps. And 27% of people there have Cyber Essentials. Great numbers. Excellent. Right, moving on then to Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. So I talked a lot about Cyber Essentials here, taking you through that process. Cyber Essentials Plus is the next step, I suppose, from Cyber Essentials, where Cyber Essentials was self-assessed, and we just respond to what you've told us. During the Plus assessment, we basically will run some technical tests to check what you've said you're doing, you actually are doing. So it's independently validated. The technical tests include vulnerability scans, patch checking on devices, checking MFA is in place. So it follows the same controls and requirements as Cyber Essentials, but we're actively testing and assessing that you are doing what you say you're doing. So it's more scrutiny, but provides that added assurance that, okay, what you've written is actually in place and working. And I always say to clients, if everything you say you're doing on your Cyber Essentials is correct and true, and you are actually living and breathing it, Cyber Essentials Plus is an easy next step. Although we do have some areas that do fall down with patching and stuff typically that people are unaware of. So it's a very good next step and a test essentially to prove your security. Some of the advantages of moving to that Cyber Essentials Plus then is definitely contracts. So quite often people are going through this process because of contracts. Cyber Essentials Plus is increasingly becoming more mandatory with the likes of working with the NHS, some government funded schemes. So it's definitely growing in popularity. Industry specific standards as well, and market differentiation. So again, loads of organizations out there have Cyber Essentials, and fewer have Cyber Essentials Plus. So naturally, those with the Plus are going to stand out a little bit more. And it also, it's proven to be effective. So the Plus, again, just ensures that you think you're patching all of your devices, and you have no out-of-date software. The Plus says you absolutely are. That is true. You are doing that, and that's what the Plus requirements bring in. So a third think the number is a third of, yeah. So for every Cyber Essentials certificate out there, 1/3 of those have gone over to the Plus. So that's quite a significant number compared to 4, 5, 6 years ago. It's definitely growing. Okay. So Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus. We're going to talk about scoping now. AJ, I'm parched. I've done plenty of talking, so I'm going to hand this one over to you to maybe tell everyone a little bit more about what should be included here.
Yep, so scoping is basically what you're including in your assessment. Ideally, you want to include everything and do a whole organization, which is in theory the simplest and most complete. If everything is compliant, it makes things like getting your insurance much easier because everything is compliant and it will be with their terms and conditions. There can be cases where you may not be eligible for whole organization, or you may not want to do whole organization. So one of the examples would be if you're a multinational, you may just want to cover the UK. If that's the case, you do have to say no to the scoping, and then we would just certify the UK. If you have perhaps some old equipment, if it's required for the business, there's no way you can get around it, then you can still say no and use segregation. If that segregated network has no internet connectivity, then you can actually just say whole organization because that's still okay. But if it does require internet connectivity, then you have to say no.
Okay. Great. And are there any changes to the scope requirements with the new question set, or is that all stayed the same?
There's a slight change that IASME has made, which, as I referred to, multinationals, they used to allow a UK entity to be considered a separate legal entity, but that's no longer allowed. If you are just certifying the UK or a group of companies and you're just including one of those subsidiary companies, you have to say no.
Okay. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And in terms of scope, so I've come across a few clients that are looking to get a particular product covered by Cyber Essentials Plus for a contract. Is that possible?
So the primary focus for Cyber Essentials is networks and the devices and services on those networks. So a product itself, I'm assuming it's a software product, you couldn't just cover that product. You'd have to cover the whole of the infrastructure that runs behind that product. Right.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you, AJ. And you mentioned segregation there, and moving stuff around.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice or best practice on how businesses can actually do that compliantly?
Yeah. So from a security perspective, when you segregate, you also want to control all the traffic and make sure you're only allowing the required traffic between segregated networks. Ideally, you want to isolate completely and not have that, but Cyber Essentials does allow that communication. So if you do take something out of scope, that you can still communicate with that out of scope network, and the out of scope network can communicate with the in scope ones.
Okay. Okay, so there's a few nuances there then, but it sounds like it's important to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so in terms then, whatever the scope is, what's covered in that then in terms of this information here?
So for the scoping, this would include all your boundary devices, so your routers, firewalls, appliances, etc., that sit on the boundary. It also includes all your end user devices, including BYOD. It's something some organizations miss. Thin clients, servers, and anything you have in considered infrastructure as a service. So your VMs hosted in Azure would be included, and all cloud services are included. You can't exclude a cloud service if your organization is using it.
Right. Okay. And one thing that's actually not, well, I suppose it could be here, mobile phones. Oh, I get so many inquiries about mobile phones.
Yep. So mobile phones are in scope. If they're accessing things like email, they're using a Wi-Fi network in the office, that brings them into scope. The only exception for mobile phones would be if it's just being used to make phone calls and receive SMS, or being used as an authentication device for MFA. If it's doing anything other than that, it's in scope.
Right. Okay. So if I Outlook on, if I decided to download Outlook on my personal device, would that bring me into scope?
Yeah, you'd be accessing company information, so that would bring that device into scope.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cheers, AJ. In terms of this table here, obviously there's a few NAs there, a few crosses. Big one I see is students. So what's the rules on students?
So if the student has their own device, so their BYOD, and they want to use it within your networks, they can be taken out of scope as long as they're running on a segregated network. So any student device, you put it on a segregated network, and that takes it out of scope. That's only specific to students and schools and colleges and universities. It doesn't apply to any other organization. Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine though that'd be a nightmare trying to get 5,000 students to register their device and roll out updates. It'd be an absolute nightmare.
Yep, yeah. It would be. Ideally, you want to still advise your students and make sure they follow best practice, because that's keeping them secure. And in a way yourself, if your segregation fails, but it's not a requirement for Cyber Essentials.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, AJ. Okay, so, actually, AJ, we've got a question here that is quite relevant. So I'm going to throw this one on the fly. It's the first question we had in, but I think it falls in with the scoping piece about 365 environments.
Okay.
So if an organization is a subtenant within a larger 365 environment, how does one get CE certified, or is that an offline question?
That's a depends question. So we would need to know exactly what configuration and what they're doing. It's not one of the ones you can kind of just go yes or no.
Okay.
It's something you learn after lots of years in IT. That most questions can't be answered yes and no. It's
it's the wonderful world of IT and cyber, isn't it? It depends.
Yeah, it depends.
It depends. Excellent. Okay, so we will get back to that question offline. Brilliant. So as a Cyber Essentials assessor, then obviously issued a lot of certificates. What's the common problems you come across?
One of the major ones is it's just misreading the questions. It's easy to do because they're not the most straightforwardly worded ones. That's the nice way to put it. When I first looked at CE, when I first went into getting certified myself, so I could certify others, I looked at the questions and assumed I should be filling it with lots of technical information, showing off my skills and what knowledge I have, and that's the complete opposite of what's required. It's just high-level descriptions of what you have in place, and that's as simple as it is. When you start going too technical, you can then have more questions being sent back to you because we then have to question further. So there's no requirement to go that in depth. High-level responses are fine.
And am I right in thinking if it's a yes or no question, yes or no suffices?
Yes, so if it's a yes or no question, you can just say yes or no. An assessor may ask for further clarification if something you've said, as I've mentioned on the previous one, where if you've been too technical, then we may need further evidence or clarification.
Okay, brilliant. And okay, end of life then. This is a big one, isn't it? You come up against?
Yeah, this happens a fair bit where people will list end-of-life operating systems or use end-of-life software. That's an automatic fail for Cyber Essentials. You can't be using anything that's end-of-life. It must be supported by the vendor and be receiving security updates. And those security updates have to cover high and critical. So some vendors may kind of give you goodwill patches after the end of life has been stated. Those wouldn't be compliant for Cyber Essentials because they're only covering typically critical vulnerabilities.
Ooh, okay, I didn't know that. You mentioned end of life software there. Now, I've got a few clients that rely on a piece of old software running on an old device to be operational? How can that, how can an organisation in that situation still get C plus, or can they, or can't they?
Yep, they can. This goes back to scoping and the segregation. They have two options. They can segregate the network that device and that software is sitting on, and if it doesn't have any internet connectivity, they can still go for whole organization. If they do require internet to that network, that's still allowed. Obviously, be careful how that's configured for obvious security reasons, but it is considered compliant. But you would have to say something like whole organization, excluding legacy networks, or something similar to that.
Okay, brilliant. Few more on here to cover.
Yeah, so another one would be missing patches. Obviously, the requirement for Cyber Essentials is you must apply security updates that cover a CVSS of 7 or above, so critical and highs, within 14 days of the vendor releasing it. Sometimes people will list old patch versions, and obviously we have to then challenge that, because that means they're not complying with the requirements.
Okay, and then admin accounts. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Admin accounts?
Yes, so the requirement for Cyber Essentials is that you must be using a separate a standard user account for day-to-day work, and only use an admin for admin tasks. Main reason for that is that if you're logged in with an admin account and you get hit by malware, that malware then becomes an admin. It can do everything your admin account can do.
Ooh, okay, that's probably not a position a lot of businesses would want to be in.
No, it's probably not great.
Okay.
Whereas if you're logged in with a standard user account, it's going to be limited to what it can do. It'll only be able to do what you can do as a standard user.
Okay, so this is an interesting one, because I know software development houses quite often will say, no, but I need an admin account. I can't go through the process to get an admin account to download something. How do businesses like that operate?
Yep, so there can be valid reasons why someone may need to use an admin account. So some developers, there are ways to protect against that, where you can just use a standard account and just elevate a separate account when required. But there can be instances where that doesn't work. So again, going back to scoping, you can de-scope a network and then put all your developers on that network, and then say something like whole organization, excluding test and development networks. One thing to be careful of, it's something we do come across a lot, is where people who aren't familiar with certain security issues may be downloading with those admin accounts. So it's never advisable to download using an admin account. Obviously, if it's malware accidentally downloaded, you then run the risk of causing issues with that device. It's always advisable to download anything with a standard user account, test that software, make sure it's compliant, and then use with an admin account.
Interesting. Okay. And one thing here that I've come across quite recently, actually, so I've been waiting to pick your brains on this. Pam, I am not IT savvy. I've not got the IT background you have. What's a PAM? Is it compliant? Does it work?
Yeah, it can be a really useful tool. So PAM is privilege access management. It's basically used to elevate permissions and control what permissions are granted. So it can be more granular than just giving someone an admin account. It can be compliant with Cyber Essentials, but sometimes the configuration can mean it can lead to a non-compliance. So it still has to be on a separate account. So you still can't elevate the privilege of a standard user account. It must be a separate account that's been elevated. Right. Otherwise, you still run into the same risks as using that admin account.
Okay, brilliant. And live question here, AJ, that is again very prevalent here. Does the separate admin account is it also required for cloud software?
Yes. So if there's any sort of admin roles in that cloud service. So say 365 is being used for email. Your regular account would be what you're using for email, so that should be a standard user account. And then you should have a separate admin account to administer anything you need to in 365.
Okay.
It shouldn't be the same account.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. I hope that answers your question. And so we've done too much detail. Another one which I imagine being quite a challenge, lack of consistency. Can you just explain a little bit more by what you mean by that one?
So sometimes we'll get responses that contradict each other. Sometimes it's down to where someone may not be technical and they're just taking advice or taking notes from their team. Common one with this is where they may not list mobile phones, but then later on in a question which is asking how you unlock your devices, they state we use a pin on our mobile phones. That's quite a common one where you've stated something that's contradicted, that you've just stated you have no mobile phones that access business data.
Okay, that must be quite tricky from an assessor's perspective, because there's like nearly 100 questions.
Yes, it can be difficult. Sometimes as you're going through, you can miss things. We're humans, so it's possible you make a mistake. And some of it is subjective. One assessor may see it slightly different as another.
Yeah, proper challenge, I can imagine that one. Brilliant, thank you, AJ. So, scheme changes then. So Willow was released at the end of April. There's a question here that I'll address. So Willow will be applicable to anyone that registered after that date. So I think it was like the 30th of April, whatever that Monday was. So if you registered for your Cyber Essentials on or after that date, your Cyber Essentials and if you're Plus will follow the Willow requirements. So if you certified on the 31st of January 2025, you would have been on the old question set. When you come to renew this January 2026, well, next January 2026, you will now then be on the Willow question set. Okay, so scheme changes then. AJ, Cyber Essentials, what's changed?
So for the CE itself, it's mainly wording of certain questions to make them a little bit easier to understand. Still not there 100%, but it is improving. They've changed the flow to again help with some of the understanding. One of the major changes is the allowance of passwordless solutions. So you can now use any sort of passwordless solution in place of passwords. It's not compulsory, you can still use passwords, so you can still stick to what you're doing currently. One thing to be careful with using password solutions, it's not everything you may think is passwordless, it's not technically passwordless. So if you're logging into your phone with your fingerprint, that typically has a fallback to a PIN. So it's not really fully passwordless. It's just kind of a little useful workaround you can do to make your life easy, but it's still not considered fully passwordless. Fully passwordless solution would be something that's certified to FIDO2 compliance, which is a certification that confirms whatever you're using is compliant.
Okay. And then vulnerabilities here.
Yes, so previously the requirement was if something needed a patch, you applied the patch within 14 days. If something was end of life, you removed it.
And sorry, just to confirm, that was critical and high patches, so that's critical and high
patches, or patches with a CVSS score of 7, or any patches where a vendor didn't give you that information. So if a vendor said, we're not telling you what the problem is, but this is a fix, you would then have to apply all of those.
Does that happen often?
I would say there's a major mobile manufacturer, fruit-based, who follows that quite often. So yeah, it does happen.
Yeah, and so then the changes to the Willow.
Yep, so in Willow, the requirement is to now cover all vulnerabilities and not just those that can be fixed by a patch. So if there's a way to fix the issue by making a configuration change or a registry change or running a script, that will now have to be done as well.
Right, okay, and from your experience, do these, config changes, registry changes, do they take longer than applying a patch?
It depends on your infrastructure. Some people may already be covered by this. They may be using their own scanning tools. It's something that's been introduced. It's much more difficult to be compliant with some of those issues unless you are doing some sort of scanning. You also have to be careful on what scanning tool you're using, because you can get lots of false positives and false negatives, which can lead to issues. False positives obviously easy to fix. False negatives mean you've not detected it, so you don't know it's there.
Okay, brilliant. And passwordless, is this a new concept? Obviously, it's new in the new question set.
It's been around for a while, but it's only really now been added into Cyber Essentials to be considered a compliant method.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you, AJ. Obviously, we've got Cyber Essentials Plus here, scope verification and segregation confirmation. So actually, we've got a bit more information on these on the next slide here. So this is the CE Plus bit, right, and the changes. So how do these differ from previous?
So the major change to the CE Plus is that we now have to confirm using any means available to us to verify that what you've declared in the scope is accurate. So previously you could have said you had 10 because you weren't doing your asset management properly, but you actually had 12. So that would be something we'd need to check. Obviously, if you've had new employees, your numbers will change and we'll take that into account. But it's a case of if you've declared 10 and we see 100, that would be an automatic fail.
Okay, so if an organization does Cyber Essentials in July, to cover off another question that's come in, there's a 3-month window between getting Cyber Essentials to doing the Cyber Essentials Plus.
Yeah.
So if someone certifies today and in 6 weeks time, we do the Plus and we check their scope and it's different, that's it, failed, done, dusted.
Yeah, so if it's hugely different, obviously if they've just employed a few people or they've upgraded something, that's fine, that's acceptable, that's standard practice. But if they've gone from saying they only have a few end user devices and then we discover they have lots of servers too, that would bring into question whether the scope was valid.
Right, and if it's a fail then they go back and start again?
Yep, you would have to redo your CE and declare everything that you want to be in scope, or if you didn't want it to be in scope, you'd have to say no and move to networks that are out of scope.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And then additional checks?
Yep, so this will be on a case-by-case basis because it will depend on what the organization has and the size of the organization. Typically, this will be using your remote management tools to check what devices you have on there. If you have Active Directory, we may check to see what devices are added into there and how many accounts you have. It can be things like checking an AV solution. If you've got a cloud AV solution, that may list all your devices. Things like Intune or MDM solutions to check how many mobile phones you have. If you've declared you've got 10 and we go in and there's 100, then obviously that's not compliant.
Yeah, okay, and then the scope. So I suppose the message there is, firstly, we are going to aim to work with clients to gather the information we need in the evidence to make sure it's a compliant application, but we're quite flexible in terms of what we look at. As long as we can see and we can check, we're quite flexible working with clients.
Yeah, as long as they have something, and pretty much most organizations will have that control where we can then check to confirm everything is okay. There may be the odd exception where we may need to run a network scan, but we're trying to hold back on doing that because that can be quite intrusive and can take a lot of time.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And then so whole organization not in scope, how are we doing that? Do we have to run like a PCI segmentation test? What?
No, we don't have to go that in deep to it. So where someone says no to the scope, that means they're certifying that they have segregated something off their main networks, and it's just a case of checking that segregation exists. So if it's just one network and they have one switch, managed switch, which has got a VLAN off it, we can just confirm by doing some sort of screen sharing. The person responsible for that device can just kind of show us the information as they're logged in via a Teams session. That would be fine. It's useful to get a network map if it's a larger organization and they have more segregation. So if they provide a network map, that'll indicate where the segregation is, and then we would just need to evidence that as well by doing the same checks.
Okay, cool. That sounds okay. Doesn't sound too bad.
As long as you've been accurate with your declaration, then it shouldn't be an issue. One thing we are finding is where, because it is common practice, it's not recommended from a security point of view, but it does happen where clients may be using hypervisors and they're segregating on those hypervisors. That's not allowed for Cyber Essentials. They may have test images, they may have something on there for redundancy, so they may have a mirror of something that's live. That technically is all in scope. So in terms of testing, we're not going to tell you to switch to the other device to confirm it, but you would need to confirm that you are patching and you are bringing up those systems regularly to make sure that they're compliant too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because the last thing you want to do is have an issue with one device and you bring up something else which hasn't been patched for 6 months and then expose it to an attack.
Yeah, that's a good bit of advice there, AJ. Brilliant. Thank you. So, okay. Just talking off the back of that, then another live question to throw at you, AJ. Are DMCs in scope as part of testing?
Everything is in scope. So it depends on the DMZ. Typically, they'll be on the boundary and connected to an internet, but not necessarily. It does depend on, it's going back to depends. It depends on the configuration. If it's declared, if it's a DMZ that's been used for some sort of testing purposes, has no internet connectivity, then technically that would be out of scope, but we would have to get more information.
Yeah, okay, brilliant, thank you. Okay, so impact then. So how realistically, real world impact to organizations?
It again goes back to that depends. It depends on what they have. But for most people, this will be an increased time taken for doing the C+ process, because there's additional checks we'll have to do and get confirmation. You may need to have more technical people involved who can then provide that access. So it will be a case-by-case thing, but in terms of the major change, it will be that additional time taken. Your asset management will come into this again, where it's previously, if you weren't doing a great job, but it was kind of okay, and you declared 10 devices and you had 12, that we wouldn't have been testing to make sure that was compliant. We're just checking the 10 devices you've declared. But now that comes into scope, because your asset management will need to be more accurate, because that's part of the scoping check.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and I think these are all good practice things anyway, right? So keeping an asset list up to date is good practice. It
is good practice. It's one of the things that is recommended by Cyber Essentials, but not tested, although it kind of is going to be now. Along with backups, recommended, but not actually tested. But you want to be accurate with your asset list, because for various reasons, you may be missing patches on devices because you don't know they're there. You may be paying for licenses that you don't need, so it's an additional cost to the business that you could get rid of. It's a useful thing to be doing.
Okay, and so you mentioned backups there. We've had a question from someone here. I read something about backups. Is this a new requirement?
No, so it's still not a requirement. It's a recommendation. So ideally, you want to have backups, because if something goes wrong, it's the best way to recover. One thing to be careful of is making sure that you do test those backups. I come across multiple organizations that say they have backups, and then when you ask them when was the last time you tested it, we never have. We just assume it'd be okay. Backups can get corrupted, backups can fail, backups can pick up corrupted information. So there's lots of different reasons, and it's always advisable to make sure that you recover those backups on a regular basis to make sure that they will be available when required.
Yeah, be useful, I suppose, and not. Yeah.
Sometimes if it's a big organization, I've come across somewhere they did the backups, they did individual testing, but they never tested them all together. So their backup solution would have struggled with the bandwidth had something major happened. And instead of recovering in a few days, it would have taken them months just to recover.
Right.
So they needed to work on that solution.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant, AJ. And just to address the last one there, people available on the day, there's 72 hours notice, isn't it, for sample devices? Yeah.
So this is a new implementation in Willow. There's a 72-hour window. So we have to select randomly from your asset list that you're going to provide the devices that we're going to check. And we can't tell you which devices we're going to check until that 72-hour window is in place, so 3 days before the actual assessment. Yeah,
and don't panic, anyone. We're collaborating with clients. You know, we're in communications, so that 72-hour window, we're on it. We'll send you the list.
Yeah.
Are there any caveats here? You know, is there any flex if we pick someone and they're on holiday, or we pick someone and I don't know, it's their client-facing role? So what's the rules around that?
The confirmation we've had recently from IASME is that we can ask for a list of the people that will be available. So if people are on holiday, we can exclude those, because obviously you don't want someone dialing in while they're on holiday just to run a test. So we can exclude those, and that's been deemed acceptable by IASME.
Okay, yeah, because I can imagine it'd be very, very challenging for a lot of organisations, especially around this time. Everyone's off on holiday, July and August, I tell you. Okay, so AJ, thank you very much for that. So we're going to run through the questions that have already been submitted. We'll get through those, and then we've got quite a lot of questions that have come in live, with some being addressed. So we'll rattle through these, then we'll pick up some of the ones that have come in during the presentation. As I said, we'll get as much done as we can. If we don't get there, we'll reach out separately. So, we've got loads of questions on passwordless authentication, by the way. So it seems like a massive headache. Is it hard to mandate? Can you still use traditional methods, essentially?
Yes, you can. You can still continue to use username and password. There's no requirement to use passwordless, but it is an option that's available. Some vendors are starting to state that they will be moving across to that, so including Microsoft. So it's something that you may have to introduce at some point.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a question here. So we've had a few questions come in live around passwordless. So I'm going to rattle a few more over to you. And if it's anything offline, we'll take it offline. Okay. Is MFA 2.0 a requirement with Willow? Does that mean anything?
I'm not sure what they mean by MFA 2.0.
We will reach out to you to discuss that one. And are passwordless solutions required by standard, or just accepted as an alternative? So I think we've covered that. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Question on the screen here. What can you de-scope from your assessments?
Basically networks. So everything you have in scope and out scope has to be network based. So if you wanted to exclude a particular server, you would have to exclude the network it's sitting on. So you would have to segregate that network, place that server in that network, and then you can de-scope it. And that basically applies to anything. So you could be running Windows 2008 as on server. If it's an in-scope network, that's an automatic fail. If it's on a segregated network with no internet, that's fine. If you did need internet, I wouldn't recommend it, but it is allowed. you can then just descope it to be something like whole organization excluding legacy server network.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, AJ. Great question here. How best to cover BYOD?
So BYOD has to be treated exactly as company owned. I wouldn't recommend using BYOD, but that's my personal opinion, not URM, not IASME, because they allow it. It's an easy target in terms of attacking, but it is allowed, but it should comply with it in the same way as a company-owned device. I think it mentions authenticator. So if it is just using, the phone's just being used for authenticating for MFA, then that can be taken out of scope. That's fine.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So for anyone messaging in, the slides will be available. Please pop that on your feedback, and we will share the slides and recording. This next question here, so I've probably touched on this, AJ, before. I've got a lot of clients in the education sector. So there is it's mandatory through the Department of Education for colleges and special post-16 institutions. So required through the funding year of 24/25. So yes, in some cases it is for higher education, not all. In terms of expanding to schools, there's nothing yet that we are aware of. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, it did branch out to more industries or sectors, as it does seem to be going that way. It does, St. James's Place mandated it, NHS, it's definitely getting out there as a bare minimum standard. Okay, how critical is Cyber Essentials for the UK market if they're already certified for 27? Do you want to do this one, AJ, or do you want me to do this one?
I can probably do this one.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's critical in terms of if you're applying for a government contract and they're requiring you to have it, then obviously it's something you need. It is different to ISO 27, which is more risk-based. If you are already certified, then you're probably going to be complying with the majority of requirements for Cyber Essentials. The areas that fall foul are usually the patching. So ISO may accept risk and say you can allow 30 days, but the requirement for Cyber Essentials is 14. So that's one of the areas that can cause an issue.
I think the key word there is risk. So ISO 27 is very risk-based. You can decide really what risk you're willing to accept. Cyber Essentials, there's no element of risk. It's right, you're doing it or you're not doing it. So they are very different. Criticality will depend on your organisation and who you're delivering your services to, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, right, so cyber security certificate. So dated from the final test, not the date from the old certificates. So some organisations lose 1 or 2 weeks. We try and keep that to the minimum by liaison with our clients. But is there any reason it works like this, AJ? Is this one out of our hands?
It is out of our hands. It's something that's decided by the NCSE and IASME. It has been mentioned to them in the past, but they've still continued to do it the way they have. Mm-hmm. The MOT part's interesting because that's how I always compare Cyber Essentials for non-technical people when they ask me exactly what it is, and it is like an MOT. It's not covering everything. It's not saying you've got your MOT and your engine's not going to fall apart 2 weeks later. The Cyber Essentials is the same. It's not guaranteed that you're going to not be hacked. It's just saying that it covers most of the basics. And again, as a comparison for MOT, for the MOT, you'll have some people who just want to pass. They don't care if their wheels are going to fall off next week. They just want that pass. And then there'll be others who see it as a way of making sure their car is as secure as possible and safe as possible because their family are traveling in it. So they don't want their wheels to fall off. It's the same for Cyber Essentials. There will be some people who just want to pass just to win a contract, and then there'll be others who want to actually make sure they're being secure.
And maintaining it throughout the year. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Brilliant, AJ, thank you very much. So some questions submitted today. Everyone, we have had a lot of questions come in, nearly 50 questions. So we'll run through, I'll try and start at the top, and we'll try and run through some of the quick fire ones, AJ, and then some of them a little bit more specific. So we will get in touch to address those specific ones, because I can already imagine it's going to be, it depends. Typical C+ audit duration for an organisation with approximately 100 PCs. This is going to be dependent on the uniformity of the estate, right?
Yeah, it'll depend on what OS versions they're running, so and what editions. So each edition, each build needs to be treated as an individual OS and tested separately. So again, yeah, as you said, it depends.
It depends. Best case scenario on that one, 100 PCs, they're running the same version, same operating system.
If they're all,
need to test 5.
Yeah, if they're all the same, you could get away with doing just 5.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, if you're fully remote, how would the Cyber Essentials Plus scans be run?
If you mean fully remote as in working from home, that would be where we just run an external scan on one of the director's IPs, because that's what's required. Internally, we would use agents, so we prefer to use Qualys. You would just install an agent on your device that would run the vulnerability scan, and then we would just have a quick team session to run through the manual checks we need to go through.
Perfect. Thank you very much, AJ. So I'm mindful of time. I've just got a few more slides to cover. So got some great questions in there. I think AJ's sitting down for the rest of the day to run through questions so that we're prepared when we catch up and follow up with everyone. Off the back of the webinar, how URM can help. So we offer an SAQ review service. So this is for your Cyber Essentials. Whereby you get the application in URM's own portal, and before you submit, we essentially will review the responses and then set up a Teams call to discuss any areas that are non-compliant or more information is required before you actually hit that submit button for assessment. So as you've attended today, we're actually offering that service free of charge. For anyone that registers with us for their Cyber Essentials renewal. Registration before the 31st of August, but once you're registered, you have up to 6 months to hit that submit button. So if your expiration is December and you want to take us up on that offer, you can register for the application, sit on it for a few months and then get in touch sort of December, or we get in touch with you to organise that review. If you're interested in that, please pop that on your feedback. We also do scoping and requirements workshops, so these dive into a little bit more detail. Very good for anyone that's very new to the scheme or going through the process for the first time. That's essentially sort of half a day with one of our assessors, and we're a certification body as well. So there was a question about, can we help? Yes, we can help, as well as assess and issue the certificate. So please register any interest on your feedback form. Due to holiday season in August, we're taking a break from events, but we are back on the 10th of September. So that event, we are going to be talking to one of our cyber consultants that deliver web application pen tests, and we're going to talk about those in some level of detail. And then sector specific, on the 17th of September, we're running a Q&A session with one of our PCI QSAs. So register for those, keep an eye out for our invites. As ever, please take a couple of seconds at the end to fill out your feedback form. It's really important that we hear from you, and we use that information to shape our future events. So any feedback is welcome. Please complete the form. And lastly, from myself and AJ, thank you very much for spending the time with us today. Hope you found that useful, and look forward to hopefully seeing you all at events in the future.